we had a Middle East trip. We had a trip to Saudi Arabia. We had a trip to Qatar. We had a trip to the UAE. And there were so many moments that I think were so significant for the future of this country, right? You saw these moments where you got $600 billion from Saudi Arabia, $1.2 trillion from Qatar, $1.4 trillion from the UAE. These are investments in the United States of America. Not only that, Mary, but President Trump went over and he ensured that he's getting friendly with the people over there in the Middle East, with these different countries. And why is that important? It's important because we want great allies there. We want people who are going to be on our team and not on Iran's team, right? We want people to look at the United States in a very positive way and have a great relationship with us. That would all be great. And I think that you can see it in the polling. People loved this trip. The approval rating overall for the president jumped 5 points after his trip, up to 50%, Mary, which I think is absolutely fantastic. Give me your assessment of the trip overseas to the Middle East.
I think friendly is the perfect way to put it. I mean, the thing that really struck me was every place he went tried to outdo the one before in pageantry and like and reception. Money. Yeah, and money and like just showing him like how much they appreciate the work he's trying to do to like stabilize the region, because the reality is that, you know, Trump kind of campaigned on this idea that he was going to put America first. And there was not going to be any more like introduction into never-ending wars. He wasn't going to try and spread democracy overseas. He was going to look at America and he's going to say, what's the best thing for us? The best thing for us is for there not to be war raging over in the Middle East all the time, right, and for us not to have to send our troops over there to keep the peace. And so I think that these kinds of things play really well, especially with the heartland of America, who, you know, the majority of parents are sending their kids off to fight these wars. It's not people on the coast. So whenever you look at that and you kind of see the little kids waving the American flag and you see them so excited to see the president, and not just that, but like the people in charge, the rulers of these countries that are coming out and they're embracing him, physically embracing him, giving him hugs and shaking their hand and kind of like doing away with the more formality that you would see even if you just traveled to Canada or the UK. This is like an actual embrace of like friendship and thank you so much for everything that you're doing to stabilize our region, and also coming back with all of these you know, the investments into our infrastructure, investments into our technology systems here. What a great day and like week it was to be an American, to watch our president go over there, not stumble down the stairs, not stumble through his speech, get through it, get hugged and do all these things. So I think that this I think it kind of calmed a lot of fears and helped Americans see that this kind of stable strength through, you know, peace through strength type of movement's really going to work. I also really loved the fact that he hit at the neocons in one of his speeches where he was like, we're no longer going to like look back at that 90s era Republican Party policy and enact that over here. And I'm like, thank God, like finally someone is coming out and saying it, and it's not just JD Vance as the president of the United States, you know. So this is, I thought it was really great.
It was so great. Yeah, and he said, Stephanie, he really gave credit for the way these areas have built themselves up, and they've kind of westernized in some ways. You know, Saudi Arabia, like 7 years ago or 8 years ago, I don't even think women could drive. I believe you had to, as a woman, at some point in the relatively recent past, if you wanted to go to a doctor's appointment or something, you had to have either permission from your husband or your father. They're changing the ways over there a bit, and women are able to drive. It's not as strict, you know, their society over there. But President Trump said, look, we don't want to come in and nation build. You did all of this yourself, and you have this ability yourselves to enrich your countries and to better your countries and to do all of these great things. I thought that was such a smart play, and just to say like, hey, you guys pat yourselves on the back for how far you've come, and I think there's a lot more you can do. I also love that he really urged Saudi Arabia to join the Abraham Accords. Yeah. I thought that was fantastic. I think that would be such a win if we saw that happen as well. He lifted the sanctions on Syria and was the first president in 25 years to meet with the leader of Syria, marking sort of a shift and maybe a transition period and a softening of things and a reset of sorts, which I think could be huge for the entire world if we're able to see really positive things come out of this region.
Yeah, I mean, what we witnessed was the art of the deal, the president edition. Was truly a historic week for the U.S. and all of the nations involved. And I think back of all of the leftists who are constantly fretting of how President Trump's going to appear on the world stage, and they worry about him being a disaster and all of these things. Yet when he actually goes to other nations and meets with the heads of these nations, it always goes incredibly well. Just think of the optics of what happened, and specifically Saudi Arabia, where they had the fighter jets escort Air Force One,
cool.
how they rolled out the purple carpet, which is, one of the highest honors. The crown prince was waiting for him, and it's just such a stark contrast on how they treated former President Biden, which is the crown prince didn't even meet him at the airport. And so again, these leftists who are constantly criticizing Trump don't want to give credit where credit is due. And as Mary mentioned, the over $1 trillion in secured investments to the U.S. and imagine all of the jobs that's going to bring to this country. And, again, nobody wants to give credit where credit's due.
Well, it was such a cool thing to watch. You're right. The fighter jets. My favorite too is whenever he was walking down one of these kind of like welcome receptions, and there were the hair twirlers, and he was like,
yeah, the
"I
hair
love
flipping."
it."
I know, that was the greatest part.
So good. But that's who he is. And then he's sitting in one of these giant, I don't know if he was in a mosque or what he was in. He was in one of these giant, like ornate, maybe it's a palace of some variety. And he's commenting on that. That's good marble work. That's why people love him. Like you're never getting that from any other president. He's so real. He's so himself. But he's so strong, and it is the peace through strength that he's consistently talked about that we actually saw taking root and taking hold in this very trip that he took overseas. The other thing that I thought was funny was to see the hysteria over the $400 million plane that Qatar apparently is going to gift the United States of America. And there was an ABC News reporter who asked President Trump about this and would he owe them favors and this, that, and the other, which if anyone's ever met President Trump, you know what? He's a businessman. He may be president of the United States for a second term, but he's a businessman at heart, and he wants a great deal. And he's saying to himself, listen, if we can get a plane for free for the United States, that's money I'm saving the taxpayers. That's money we don't have to put out, right? This is a good thing. And he made this, he gave this analogy of Sam Snead, I think it was, a golfer. And he said to this ABC News reporter who asked, he goes, you ever heard of Sam Snead? He used to say, if they're going to give you a putt, take the putt. And they're going to give us a plane, so I'm going to take the plane. I just, Mary, I think the funny thing is to see where everybody tries to get crazy. They know they can't really criticize this trip, so they went like triple hard on the Qatari plane, apparently.
Yeah, and you know what I thought was really insane with this whole deal is it's like no one batted an eye when President Biden's son, Hunter Biden, received all that money from Burisma. Yeah. That was just shoveled under the rug and, kind of ignored by mainstream media. But because the taxpayers get a break on paying for a plane, all of a sudden that's the worst thing that's ever happened to democracy. And I remember seeing a lot of people tweet about it, including Hillary Clinton, saying you don't get a plane unless, there's like a favor being asked behind it. And I'm thinking you, of all people, would know, wouldn't you, Hillary Clinton? Like, let's talk about Haiti. Let's talk about the Clinton Foundation. Let's talk about all of these different things did you get favors for these things? What about when your husband was governor? And, it's just this hypocrisy. They want to put their sins onto him and say, we know we've done it. So, of course, he's going to have to be doing it too. And the reality is that Trump's just kind of laughing and saying, this is just me getting a free plane for the American taxpayer.
Laura, but we're missing the big story here, and that is the fact that Boeing hasn't been able to produce this new Air Force One for the president. I mean, think back that billions of dollars were invested in this plane, back in Trump's first presidency, and they still haven't been able to build one plane. That is the story here.
No, it's embarrassing, Stephanie. This is. The sad thing is, if we can't revive Boeing and get Boeing back up to snuff, I mean, my gosh, I don't want to bring it back up again, but they're part of the reason those astronauts got stuck up in space that Elon had to go rescue, right? It's really kind of sad to see that we are still waiting. You're right, on the Air Force One plane. It was supposed to be done last year, I believe, or maybe in December of this year. And now it's kind of open-ended. I think President Trump sent Elon at some point during the transition period to check on it and see what's going on. And he came back and he was like, no bueno, like things are not going well for that. So, and by the way, this plane, the Qatari plane that everybody's hysterical about, it'll be the next president's plane too. It's not like Donald Trump is taking this plane with him when he leaves office. So it's all kind of crazy to me. We need a new Air Force One. I think it's 40 years old, the one that he's currently flying around on.
For full shows, live and on demand, it's Salem News Channel.